Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we'll have a rundown of several key issues affecting the global Sikh community today, and we'll have a special focus on how hate crime against Sikhs has hit the headlines over the last couple of weeks as we examine two high-profile incidents on either side of the Atlantic, both reflecting ignorance and prejudice, and the battle the community is still having to fight to raise awareness. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. As I have noticed a lot of comments coming in on our Substack as well, so we'll have to start adding some of those into our comments at the end. So that's excellent. We appreciate all of the interaction with you as an audience and as a part of the show. So again, keep those comments coming in. Don't forget to stick around to the end of the show to see what comments made it onto the screen today. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed, and James and I together in the show will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, do stay tuned for the end of the show when we'll take a look at those great comments which have come in since then. So many thanks. Right, James, let's get underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, we are going to try something new, Angus, and we hope that the viewers will let us know if you like this format as we start to play with things as we're getting very close to going live with the show. Exciting stuff as we go live. Of course, you'll be able to interact during the show as opposed to waiting to watch it after we record. But in any event, we are going to start taking a look at the beginning of the show of headlines in a bit shorter of a context than you're used to. So we'll start the show. We'll look at some headlines from around the world of significance to the Sikh community. And of course, after that, we'll take a deep dive into certain topics with Angus there, and we'll see how this goes. So if you enjoy the new format or have some suggestions, let us know. We really want you to be involved as we keep going with new iterations of the program to make it more interesting and more exciting for you as a viewer. Now, as we take a look here, we will be looking, as I said, at various stories, and the most urgent issues facing the Sikh community outside of India are centered on a multi-layered threat environment. Now, the environment encompasses the both immediate danger of street-level bigotry, which Angus will get into later in this show on particular stories, as well as targeting the visible identity and the more insidious coordinated campaigns at state-level repression. Now, of course, these stories are going to be important to everybody, including us at the Sikh community and communities all over the world. And so we'll bring those to you. And we're going to start out looking at the political and security climate for Sikhs in Canada. Now, that remains heavily influenced by the aftermath of the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar as the legal case continues very slowly through the system. Now, the issue, of course, has transitioned from a community-specific grievance into a matter of Canadian national security. This investigation by the RCMP and other international enforcement and intelligence agencies is ongoing. So we haven't seen a lot of updates ever since the report on transnational repression, which, again, we didn't see a great deal focused on India in that report. But again, it is something that is ongoing and we are watching as it continues on. Now, that whole inquiry was formally labeled, which formally labeled India as the second biggest threat to Canada when it comes to interference and transnational repression. So again, it's still a big story, something that we are watching. And of course, it plays a big role in the stories that we're going to be covering. So we are also looking at how it's outside of Canada as well, as the U.S. has a report that has come out in recent months, as well as the recent release of different information that was contained in the U.S. Investigation into the attempted assassination of Gurpatwant Singh Gupta, sorry, or not Gupta, sorry. Oh, Panoon, sorry, Mr. Panoon, I totally blanked there. But in any event, that is something that we're watching, and we'll have more details on those as we go throughout this new format. Now, of course, we're also looking at hate on the streets in Wolverhampton. An attack of several Sikhs was very viciously brought out, not only in terms of the attack, but shared on social media as well. And again, Angus is going to take a look at this story as we move forward with the show tonight. So again, you'll want to watch for that. And so I won't spend a lot of time on that. But again, if you are looking for the full report that you see just kind of scrolling through, you can always find that on our Substack, and we'll bring it up on the screen as well. So if you want to just pause and read some of it, then you're welcome to do that as well. But you can find the full stories on our Substack as well. And we hope that you enjoy that new format as we continue to find ways to interact with you. Now, let's take a look at some political expression and diplomatic friction. And again, that relates to the Khalistan referendum in Washington, D.C. that we covered last night and, of course, was a huge topic in Washington. Now, amidst the security concerns, the political mobilization continues. On August the 17th, the organizers, Sikhs for Justice, held a Khalistan referendum event in Washington, D.C. Now, reports on August 19th describe it as a platform for the Sikh community to express its political aspirations for an independent Sikh nation through democratic means. And again, this is a very important topic to the show that we cover quite often, and it is a very big importance of significance for our viewers. So again, something that we cover quite often, but we spoke in big terms last night, and we really see the referendum as a major success in Washington, more so than the 16,500 people that voted, but the multitudes of people around the world that were educated on the Khalistan issue and the importance of Sikh sovereignty in the state of Punjab. So again, huge information there that got out to the mainstream public. So again, a huge success. Congratulations to Sikh for Justice, as well as all of the organizers, volunteers, and others that were involved in the referendum vote in Washington, D.C. Now, when we look at the high-profile political and security issues that dominate headlines, deeper reports from yesterday revealed that there's a systemic challenge facing many Sikh immigrants. A detailed report from the California group has highlighted how a combination of language barriers, low income, and, of course, precarious immigration status severely cripple access to health care for first-generation immigrants. Now, this creates a hidden health crisis with serious conditions like cardiovascular disease, domestic abuse, and severe depression, often being addressed only through informal volunteer-run clinics in the Gurdwaras. So again, it has become a major concern not only in the US, but in Canada, as well as the UK and elsewhere in the world. Now, given that these different issues that have popped up when it comes to being able to assimilate into a system where it is completely different than your home country, it can be tough, especially when you're looking to navigate a healthcare system that is quite substantially different. Now, there is a movie coming out on the 22nd of this month. Yes, it should be a lot of fun to watch. I'm going to have to see if there's English subtitles or if it's in English. I'm not sure yet, but I'm looking into it. And this explores, in a comedic way, the different challenges that are faced, including that of what we just discussed, and that is accessing healthcare and other programs to be aware of what preventative measures and other educational resources may be available for the first-generation immigrants, not only from India, but around the world. So yes, I think that this show should be very entertaining. It was originally to be released in May, but had to be delayed, and now it's coming out on the 22nd, all around the world except for India. Go figure. I think we all know why that might be. Now, let's take a look at the community abroad, and that's grappling with the external threats, and the situation within Punjab itself is different, though equally complex. The challenges that are centered on internal grievances, political strife, and of course the enduring quest for historical accountability. As we cover that, the political discourse in Punjab is heavily colored by recrimination. Chief Minister Bhagwant Singh Mann has launched a sharp attack against the previous SAD government, holding them directly responsible for the 2015 Bagari sacrilege incident and for fostering the state's devastating drug crisis. And they even go on to accuse certain levels of government and individuals within government for using the government vehicles for drug trafficking, reducing the opportunity for law enforcement to stop, more the chances of being stopped. So again, very serious accusations being made. And of course, that political maneuvering occurs alongside the state-led development initiatives. Now, the government is planning a new exhibition centers in Mohali, Amritsar, and in Ludhiana. Now, this is promising a new industrial approvals being brought in within 45 days via a new online portal. They're trying to expedite the process and make that work in a much more efficient manner than it has in the past. However, the chief minister himself is facing criticism from the state's BJP unit for allegedly distorting a Gurbani hymn during a public address, and an accusation that underscores the intense scrutiny public figures face in the matter of faith. So again, it's definitely more challenges that we see and we're learning about outside of India that we may not have been aware of before. As for a lingering cry for justice, yes, we are going to take a look here at a powerful statement that stands in contrast to the partisan political rhetoric. The officiating Jathedar of the Akal Takht, of course, the Giani Kuldeep Singh Gurjat, sorry, I mispronounced that, but has called on the Jammu and Kashmir government to finally reveal the truth behind the Chhattisgarh massacre of March the 20th, 2000, where 35 innocent Sikhs were brutally killed. Visiting the memorial in the district 26 years after the tragedy, the Jathedar highlighted the profound pain of the victims' families who are still awaiting for justice, as the perpetrators have never been brought before the courts. And again, they haven't even been publicly identified or held accountable in any way, something that you and I cover quite frequently, Angus. Now, he pointed out to the bullet marks still visible on a wall, and that marks a very painful physical reminder of how the Sikh community and as a minority have been targeted just repeatedly, and that includes other minorities as well. Now, of course, these two events are revealing conflicting uses of historical trauma in Punjab's public sphere. The political establishment, of course represented by Chief Minister Mann, is actively weaponizing the memory of the Bagari incident and the drug crisis for immediate partisan gain within the Khalis. So again, it is really just politics playing their games from each side, trying to maneuver and outdo each other. But what happens in between is that the innocent civilians are the ones that are paying the price. Whether that has to do with the generational trauma of the previous events that have happened throughout Punjab and throughout India, or those that are being lost through the drug crisis that's sweeping across Punjab and the rest of the world. As they try to play the blame game and try to use these issues for political points, of course, people's lives are being uprooted, families are being destroyed, and of course, workplaces are being impacted as well through the loss of production. So huge issues. When you look on the ground for the economic and social pressures, well, of course, the fragility of Punjab's public institutions is starkly illustrated by the ongoing crisis at Punjab University. Faculty members there have not received their salaries for the month of July and are actually threatening right now to completely boycott classes. And that could happen as early as August the 21st if the funds are not released. Now, this brings into a bigger picture that the university is facing a severe financial crisis because its monthly grant of 32 crore are what they receive from the government, while their payroll just in salary is 35, plus the 10 crore pension payments that go out each month. So again, that does not include the other overhead that they are looking at. This is a huge liability for them, but it also shows the desperate measures that need to be taken in order to ensure education for the next generation stays respected around the world and not seen as a Mickey Mouse, makeshift education system. So again, it's got to be addressed. But how do they do that with keeping in line the responsible fiscal measures that they have to bring in at this time as well? Now, as we continue on, we can look at the day's events in Punjab, as the diaspora does not occur in a vacuum. They are shaped by a broader context of Indian politics and volatile regional geopolitics, which create a complex and often perilous environment for the Sikh community. Now, of course, the tense border and diplomatic overtures that we've seen and talked about, and that's the high-stakes talks that are going on in New Delhi. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is meeting with India's National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, to address the protracted border dispute. And that is, of course, something that's been dragging on, but they are now actually meeting face-to-face. But there have been, of course, different setbacks of the recent past. With that said, though, it is hoped that these negotiations are of critical and direct importance to Punjab as a border state and primary recruitment ground for the Indian Army. Many Sikh families have members serving on the front lines. For them, the stability of the line of actual control is not just an abstract concept, but it is a very important foreign policy as well as internal matter in India. So again, it's got a lot to do with the security, not only of the state, but also the personal security of those living along the region. When we look at the national political climate, of course, there is the upcoming vice presidential elections. So again, we'll have lots to talk about as that moves forward. We, of course, are looking at time here, so we are running short on that. But again, if you want to look at other stories and these stories in more detail, Angus, of course, our viewers can check out our Substack. Now, the headlines for today, of course, paint a compelling portrait of a global Sikh community navigating a complex and divergent set of challenges in the diaspora. Let's make sure that if you have issues, stories, and news that you want us to include in the show that you think we've overlooked, or that you feel is of big importance that maybe didn't make it onto our radar, by all means, let us know. You have to remember that a lot of times stories that are on the internet are in Punjabi or Hindu or other different languages, and therefore we don't get the opportunity to really find the true information there and the backstories that go with it. So we need the help of our viewers to point these out so that we can look at getting them translated and bringing that research that we want to bring to the show to ensure you're getting accurate and full information and news stories. Angus, that is a quick briefing of the headlines that are making the rounds around the world today.
Yeah, lots of interesting stories coming out there. I'm just going to pick apart one or two that I think probably worth a comment. Of course, we mentioned the referendum. I mean, we talked at great length about that yesterday, and it's delightful to see how the support for the referendum has just spread. And India has tried so hard to criticise it, has tried so hard to refer to it as a fringe movement, and yet even in Washington, over 16,000 people turned out. That's a huge turnout for something that is unofficial. It's always very hard to motivate communities to attend events, particularly of this sort of scale. And yet, even in Washington, over 16,000 turn up. So again, fantastic turnout there. And it sends such a powerful message to India, and not just India, but to the world in general. So a really good result there. Now, one interesting story there that you picked out there was the release of the new film. And I can't even begin to pronounce what it's called. But again, we've talked a lot, James, about how the media is so influential in manipulating and educating and just getting messages across, and it really does influence the public at large. And it's very interesting, and I've mentioned this in the past. When I see this film, it always reminds me of a very powerful film we had here in the UK called East is East, and I do urge our audience to go watch it. It must be 30 years old now, and time flies, but it was a really powerful story, very similar sort of story, but it was actually focused on the Pakistani Islamic family and their struggles, their multi-generational struggles here in the UK, in a northern town or a northern city. How the older generation, very traditional Islamic, sort of traditional parents, or actually the father was traditional Muslim, married a white English lady, and their offspring, they had, I think, 3 children, grown-up children, who ended up really torn between East and West. It was torn between their traditional Islamic background and yet the attractions of Western modern society, going to discos, of course it was the 1980s in those days, going to discos, alcohol, and all the sort of the bad things in terms of the traditional views. And it was that family struggle, but it was done in a really, really humorous way. And in terms of breaking down barriers and educating just ordinary white people like myself, when I watched that film, I suddenly understood so many of the struggles that community faced. And this film now being released, I hope is going to have that same sort of effect to a wider audience. This is actually why the Punjabi and particularly the Sikh community need to produce more material, more media material, films and such, in the English language that actually are designed or targeting a white audience, which is obviously a bit more of a challenge, but it's because it then helps get across that message. It helps educate a broader audience. These are the issues that affect the Sikh community. And if it's done in a humorous way, in a really accessible way, the power that has in terms of getting people on side, getting people to understand the issues, getting people to support the Sikh community from outside the community, it is such a powerful tool. And so I really do hope that the Sikh community, particularly those interested in the medium and in film production and even just TV production, whatever it happens to be, even YouTube, these things do have a massive positive impact if they are done well, like that film Easter's East. So I really hope that more in the community can get involved in things like that. So one story you didn't pick up on specifically, but what is in that story, and I think this is a big area, is the monsoon. Of course, the monsoon season is always massive, and Punjab, the state of 5 rivers, water is such a massive story in the Punjab, or Punjab, however you want to pronounce it. Because, every year we have the same issues. Every year the monsoon causes floods. Of course, it comes racing off the Himalayas. It floods the floodplains right across those northern states, J&K, Punjab, etc. And yet contrast that with the summer months, the dry season, when of course irrigation is such an issue. And water management and the riparian rights have been such a sore point for the Sikh community. Because, of course, the water is controlled by, Delhi, effectively, through its various proxies, its local proxies, its water management companies. And yet, why is it every year Punjab's farmers are short of water? They're always struggling to irrigate their crops. This is the breadbasket of India, don't forget. And yet they are always battling to irrigate their crops. And yet, look at the wet season, the monsoon season, they are literally inundated. They have too much water. So again, it's all about bad management. And this is why khalistan is so important, because one of Khalistan's most important natural resources is water. Simple as that. 5 rivers. It's not going to be short of water. All that water is coming off in vast quantities from the Himalayas in the monsoon season. It doesn't take a genius. It doesn't take that much management to ensure that water is stored carefully, ready for the dry seasons to irrigate those crops. And that is where Khalistan needs its own ability to manage its own water in a much better way than is currently being controlled by Delhi. So that's a big story, that. Reference to the Chittik Singh Pura massacre. Yes, it's an ongoing open wound, this one, the Chittik Singh Pura massacre. Interesting that Gurpatwant Singh Pannoon recently interviewed, allegedly, not been corroborated, but he allegedly interviewed a whistleblower from the Indian Army, an Indian Army officer who was, he claimed, involved in that very massacre himself, saying actually it was a false flag massacre. It was blamed on Islamic terrorists. Very relevant, this, of course, to the recent atrocity in J&K in Pahalgam. But of course, it is claimed that the Chittik Singh Pura massacre was actually instituted by Indian intelligence through its proxies, through the Indian Army soldiers dressed up as Islamic terrorists. So again, very, very controversial story, that one. And then finally, yes, of course, the bigger story is this meeting between Ajit Doval and his Chinese counterpart. Yeah, China is encroaching and has been encroaching for years on those northern borders, both east and west, of India. And a lot of critics, particularly from the Sikh community, say, well, what are you doing about it, Mr. Modi? And in fact, not just in the Sikh community, many in India have actually questioned, and you won't see this in the Indian media, of course, because the Godi media doesn't want to report it. But yes, you look on social media, lots and lots of people right across the spectrum, the Indian political and religious spectrum, are all asking those questions of the BJP government. Actually, what are you doing about this? China is very clearly encroaching upon Indian territory, both in the east, and that whole sort of Bengal sort of area. but also in the west up towards Ladakh. China is moving downwards. India does not seem to care. India does not see, or I want to say India, Delhi does not seem to care. It is not throwing enough resources. Yeah, there's a few spats. We have periodic reports of minor engagements on the ground of sort of low-level ground troops firing shots at each other. But in terms of a political will from Delhi, is there any political will to actually push back on China and say, look, stop encroaching, stop stealing our villages? Because essentially there is this infiltration by China in these northern territories, taking a very subtle control of these villages. This is what China does. And what is India doing about it? That's a big question. Of course, once khalistan is established, then I think that western side, that western border, which will in fact form the northern border of Khalistan, will be very, very clearly buttressed against China. And this is why Khalistan is so important for the West, because it will form a very important, very strategic buttress against that threat of China. So yeah, again, I think it's very interesting that Ajit Doval is meeting China. It'll be very interesting what comes out of that. I suspect not very much, James, but there you go. An interesting wrap up of many of the stories there.
Exactly. So again, this is kind of a new trial by error sort of part of the show that we're going to try and see how it works. So again, for our viewers, please let us know what you think. And if you like the idea of moving a little quicker at the start of the show with more stories and headlines, or if you prefer the old format more so. But again, I'll throw it back to you, Angus, so we can head on through to the next story.
Indeed, and thanks, James. And one of the stories that, of course, you did touch upon was this issue of hate crime. And here in the UK, we've had a very nasty incident in recent days. And it does reflect a bit of an ongoing issue. It's been around for many years, this issue of hate crimes, and it's become a subject that we talked a lot about. But here in the UK, in the Midlands, in a town called Wolverhampton, where we do have a large Asian community and a large Sikh community, there was a terrible attack recently. It was caught on video of two elderly Sikh men, taxi drivers, both taxi drivers, one in his 60s, one in his 70s. So these are very vulnerable gentlemen who were just going about their daily work as taxi drivers. And they were set upon by, we believe, white right-wing thugs, basically. I mean, choose your insult of choice. But basically two white guys, clearly who had an issue. And we don't know the actual details of the backstory, what actually caused the incident. Something must have triggered it. But the ultimate end of this story is basically these two innocent men, were viciously attacked by these two thugs. And these two thugs were eventually dragged off from attacking these guys. I mean, who knows what would have happened if they hadn't been dragged off. But ultimately, these two men, as I say, they were elderly. They were brutally assaulted outside the train station in recent days. And the incident was caught on video, and that video did go viral across social media, unsurprisingly. And as you can see from the video, one victim is on the ground without his turban. So he's had his turban ripped off, which in itself is a basic hate crime. And the other is repeatedly punched and kicked. And apparently, as part of this incident, there's a lot of verbal going on here, a lot of sort of verbal insults going on. And the white guys were calling them what they call the P word, and that in English culture, in English racist culture, is the Paki word. And this again just gives an insight into really the mindset of what was going on here. We have a large Pakistani Islamic community here in the UK, but of course the diaspora is from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. We have huge, varied diaspora communities. But generically, the right-wing fascists, the right-wing thugs, call them Pakis. They wrap everybody up as a Paki. And this term has become a pejorative word. And actually, literally, the word Paki means Pakistani. It's not in itself, in of itself, an insultive, pejorative word. It is just the word, you are a Pakistani. But it has come to be known as the P word, the Paki word. And this actually gives an insight into the problem that the Sikh community have. These two Sikh gentlemen were called Pakis. Now, they're not Pakis, they're not Pakistanis, they are Sikhs from the Punjab originally. I mean, I'm assuming that, but I guess that probably is the case. But this, again, gives the problem that we're having. And it sits in the context of this overall immigration argument. And of course, we've had a huge immigration problem here in the UK. We've had huge influx in the literally millions over recent years millions of both legal and illegal immigrants here into the UK, and a large number have come from the Asian world, both Pakistan, Bangladesh, but that whole Asian region has poured people into the UK, and this, of course, has caused huge pressure on the infrastructure here in the UK, which in turn has actually given lots of fuel to the fire, this anti-immigration argument. Now, there are two arguments here, and this is a very, very clear distinction. The whole area is a minefield, and the British public, the British press, the British media have a real problem discussing, having an honest, open conversation about immigration. Because, of course, the left liberals always deliberately throw in the word, oh, you're all racists, you're all xenophobes. This is not the case. The argument is about immigration. It is nothing to do with racism. It is nothing to do with about religious background. It is nothing to do about racial background. It is simply the simple black and white fact of people coming into the UK who are coming in illegally. It doesn't matter what their background, colour, religion, whatever it is. And this is the issue. And interestingly, it is very notable that many people on the anti-immigrant side come from the immigrant communities themselves. They realise, look, this is nothing to do with race. It is to do with there are too many people coming into the UK illegally. We do not have the infrastructure to support it. We don't have the doctors. We don't have the schools. We don't have the basic social structure to support so many people. And that is the real issue here. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to have that basic black and white argument because, again, usually from the left wing, they always throw in this nonsense saying, oh, you're all racist. No, it's nothing to do with racism. As I keep saying, it is to do with we need to stop this uncontrolled immigration of anybody coming into the UK. We need to take control of our borders. That's what it's all about. And you'll even see many in the Sikh community who are very anti-immigration because sensibly they understand the distinction. This is nothing to do with racism. It is to do with we are struggling socially to accommodate so many people into our cities. We just cannot accommodate. And I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here. But many cities here in the UK are struggling literally to accommodate. We are paying something like £5 or £6 million, that's about $7 million a day, to accommodate illegal immigrants who've come in across the channel and have now been put into hotels that we, the taxpayers, are having to pay. And of course, taxpayers include people from our immigrant communities, our diaspora communities. Our hard-working Sikhs in our community, their tax is paying for people who've come in illegally into this country. This is, again, why people are standing up and saying, look, again, it's nothing to do with racism. It's nothing to do with the background colour of these people. It is the fact that these people have come into the UK illegally. They haven't come through normal legal channels, in which case they can be filtered and accepted or rejected depending on their legal status, etc., etc. Anyway, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but this actually gives an insight into why hate crime incidents are on the rise. Is because it's feeding into the right-wing narrative. And these two right-wingers who attack these Sikhs in Wolverhampton, again, use this P-word package because they have been fueled by the right-wing press saying, look, this is the problem. And of course, the backlash is against anybody who is not white. The right-wing white thugs see anybody who's not white as a potential immigrant and a potential problem. And again, this highlights the problem the Sikh community are having. So, and of course, the politicians here in the UK have got a real problem because they know that immigration is it is probably the number one subject now politically here in the UK, as indeed across Europe now. The Labour Party have been equally guilty as the Conservative Party of opening our borders. And they come out with strong words. Keir Starmer recently said that this nation is becoming what he called an island of strangers because of irresponsible immigration. And yet he's disowned that speech. Keir Starmer stood up and said this speech, which is true. This nation is fragmenting, is socially dividing because of illegal immigration and poor immigration policy. And yet the moment he stands up and says, as a result, we're becoming an island of strangers, there is a backlash from the left-wing liberals. And he stands up and says, no, sorry, I didn't mean that. He actually backtracked on that speech and said, sorry, I didn't actually read that speech before I delivered it. I mean, again, it's just pathetic and embarrassing from a prime minister to suddenly make a speech and say, oh, sorry, no, actually, I didn't mean that. But that essentially is what he meant. But again, this actually sums up how politicians are tying themselves in knots, unable to tackle this one basic problem. Again, because it is so fertile for the left-wing liberals to accuse anybody of racism. And this is why so many politicians here in the UK cannot tackle the immigration issue because they're too afraid of being accused of being racist. Likewise, the grooming gang scandal here in the UK. The police couldn't tackle the grooming gangs scandal because they were afraid of being accused of being racist. Again, this is why we're having the problem, because we cannot address the problem front on. We cannot have the grown-up conversation about it for fear of being called racist. And this is the problem. And again, the outcome of this are incidents like happened in Wolverhampton, because we cannot have a grown-up conversation about immigration. And all it does is it fuels the right wing, and it creates tensions, it creates divisions, and it means right-wing thugs then feel justified to go out and attack people in all our communities, particularly the Sikh community. So, anyway, again, I'm going off a slight tangent there. Now, Devinderjit Singh from the Sikh Federation UK he came out after this incident, and he said, Keir Starmer, in his efforts to appeal to Reform UK voters, Reform UK, a massively successful new political party, primarily running on an anti-immigration ticket, has really exploded in popularity because of this. And Devinderjit says, Keir Starmer's trying to take on the Reform Party, trying to steal votes from the Reform Party. He said, Keir Starmer needs to accept he has unwittingly unleashed a level of hate with his irresponsible island of strangers immigration speech. This also appears to be preventing him and the Labour government from delivering on their specific promise before the general election to treat anti-Sikh hate on a par with anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Now, this is important. He's hit an important point here. We have to recognise hate crime for what it is. We're not reporting hate crime for what it is. And I'm going to come on again. This is the big issue that affects both sides of the Atlantic here. We have to identify hate crime when it happens. This attack on these two gentlemen is an absolute black and white hate crime. Plain and simple, binary. There's no ambiguity here. It was a plain and simple anti-Sikh hate crime. They didn't know they were Sikhs, they just thought they were Pakis, this generic word. But essentially it was a hate crime, and it needs to be reported as such. And the problem is, it is not being reported as such. These hate crimes are not being reported. They're just called assaults, and that's it. Now, I'm going to jump across the Atlantic now, because this incident in Wolverhampton here in the UK reflects something that also happened very similarly at around about the same time in Los Angeles. I'm going to play a quick video for you now, and it's easily summed up from Fox News. Let me just play you this. This will give you a quick insight into what actually happened in Los Angeles just a few days ago.
Yes, Alex. The LAPD is classifying this case so far as an assault with a deadly weapon. They have not called it a hate crime yet. But as you can imagine, the Sikh community is very much on edge and demanding answers.
He is totally unconscious. They keep him under sedation.
That's the brother of 70-year-old beating victim Harpal Singh. Singh was brutally beaten with a golf club in North Hollywood the afternoon of August 4th after walking from his place of worship. Singh is a member of the Sikh community. 1 week later, Monday, dozens of people from all communities and various branches of government gathered near the crime scene on Lancashire Boulevard to call for justice. Sikhs historically have been the target of attacks. So far, the LAPD has not called this a hate crime, but in the meantime, activists want added protection and answers.
We are asking LAPD, please do this investigation quickly, thoroughly, and during that time, we need to have increased security around the Gurdwara to make sure that our community feels safe to be here, to be in public, because we belong here.
This video supplied to Fox 11 shows an unidentified man in the area about the time Singh was viciously attacked. As the victim fights for his life, people from as far away as San Diego showed solidarity in the Sikh community.
So, of course, the Sikh community have got together right across California to talk about this. And the real issue here, obviously, a hate crime. And again, how it reflects what happened in Wolverhampton. It's a very similar context. Essentially, this guy was targeted, Harpal Singh was targeted just for being a Sikh. And the problem here is that the Sikh community are saying to the LAPD, you've got to classify this as a hate crime. This just wasn't just a general assault. It was a deliberately targeted hate crime. And it's so important that is brought out here. Now, the legal director of the Sikh Coalition, Manmeet Kaur, actually featured in that video very briefly there. She did give a press conference as well herself. And I just want to just play you again some of the words that she came out as part of that press conference.
Here today. Anyone out there, business owners, witnesses, the public, I am making a plea to you on behalf of Mr. Singh. If you have any information, whatever information you have, you can leave an anonymous tip. The number is 1-800-222-8477. Let it be said that this event took place one day before the 13th anniversary of the Oak Creek, Wisconsin Sikh Gurdwara massacre. The Sikh community, as we've heard from so many of our speakers here today, are one of the most targeted religious communities for hate crimes. It pains me. We don't know the answers, we don't know what has happened today, but when this happens, it absolutely rips fear throughout our community. And so we must come together and make sure that justice is served, justice is brought, and to that end we are asking LAPD, please do this investigation quickly, thoroughly, and during that time, we need to have increased security around the Gurdwara to make sure that our community feels safe to be here, to be in public, because we belong here. And with that, we're going to have Dr. Randava please lead us in an ardas, a Sikh communal prayer.
So yes, as you can see, the real issue here is trying to get the LAPD to treat this as a hate crime, not just as a generic assault, because clearly there was an issue here. The fact that the victim, Harpal Singh, was a Sikh. Now, actually, subsequent to this, apparently somebody has been taken into custody and an arrest has been made. But leading up to that, yes, of course, there was a huge appeal right across the Sikh community to the LAPD. Please, you've got to find who was behind this, and again, you've got to bring out the fact that it was a hate crime. And they said a few days after this, the failure to consider bias as a potential motive erodes community trust and fosters a sense of vulnerability among our communities. We're not asking for a conclusion to be drawn without evidence, but we insist that all potential motives, including hate, be thoroughly and transparently investigated. And as a result, also, the Sikh Coalition and 40 other organisations across the community sent a letter to the LAPD and the District Attorney demanding justice for Harpal Singh. And then yesterday, as part of just the overall reaction, the LA Sangat has called to join everybody to join together to distribute meals and hygiene supplies on Saturday, August the 23rd, that's this Saturday, to honour Harpal Singh Ji, details to be announced. So basically, the community has, as it always does, has got together just in support of Harpal and his family, but also just to go to the media and say, look, you do realise what's going on here. And again, this highlights this big issue, and again, it reflects exactly what's happening here in the UK, is that these are not just generic assaults. They are assaults, they are hate crimes, they are specifically targeted against the Sikh community, but also the fact that people do not understand who the Sikh community are. They are just wrapped up in, they're just foreigners, they're just dark-skinned. And again, it reflects post 9/11, the first victim of a hate crime post 9/11, which in itself was instigated by a Muslim. It was a Sikh who was targeted because the killer thought he was a Muslim, even the fact that he was a Sikh. So again, this is the challenge facing the Sikh community, is to try and get the world at large to understand we're not Muslims, we're not this and that and the other, we're Sikhs. We wear a turban because this represents who we are. And again, it's all about this whole education. So James, again, it's very sad in many ways, but it also helps actually, helps to sort of encapsulate the issue into one single basket, let's call it, is that people need to understand in wider society, right across both sides of the Atlantic, who the Sikh community are, who they represent, and essentially any crimes against the Sikh community must be branded as hate crimes, because without them being branded as hate crimes, they cannot be tackled, and the root cause of hate crime cannot then be attacked. And again, it comes back into the overall larger political context, is that we need to have more grown-up conversations about immigration, about racism, about all these separate issues, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, there's several things about this that really stand out. And one of them being, of course, the anger and frustration of those in the community who are speaking out about the bail issue. And that several attackers in the UK that were arrested were actually released on bail fairly quickly. Again, this is an issue that we see being brought up in Canada, in the US, in the UK, and that is a need for bail reform when it comes to violent or hate-based crimes. So again, very, very significant, but it also shows that although the bail system overall works well, in totality in the way it should, but there are times when maybe there are individuals that don't need to be released back into the community. Sometimes, though, it's based on fear as opposed to actual recidivism or reoffending rates while they're on bail. It does happen, but it's actually very, very minimal. But again, it just shows that maybe there is room to improve the bail system when it comes to violence and hate-based crimes. Very big points. And for anybody that, is unaware or questions whether or not it was race-based, first of all, calling them Packies or, making such slurs, that should be in itself indicative of a hate crime. But further to that, in the UK, the attacks there, the individuals had their turbans forcibly removed throughout the attack, violently removed. And again, that shows a real, just insult on top of injury. Now, when it comes to the community, when you look at the individuals that were injured, it also has a very far-reaching, devastating impact on the families as well. For any of you that have not ever seen someone in a hospital bed with extensive brain injuries, what happens is that the brain swells, the fluid gets compressed, and therefore it puts pressure on all parts of the brain. Now, in many cases, medical staff have to actually drill a hole and put essentially a tap in the skull at the top that releases some of that pressure. Now, in the meantime, the person's head does swell, and their head swells so much that their ears actually look like puckered little holes. That's how devastating and how visual it can be. And I hate to, give you that visual, but at the end of the day, I think it's very important to understand what the families go through when they are there with someone who's been victimized by this needless crime, by this needless violence. The visuals of that will never, ever be erased from their minds, regardless as to whether the person makes 100% recovery or otherwise. And that is just another level of the impact and the way that it impacts others in the family and those around them, but also the medical staff and everybody that treats them. It has a far-reaching impact on the whole community, not just the individual who's been attacked. So remember that, because we need to find ways to reduce violence in communities, not to encourage for this divisiveness and this polarization against immigrants and immigration. It's about responsible immigration. It's not about eliminating immigration, and it sure as hell is not about targeting immigrants from any part of the world. We should be accepting them, inviting them, and they have been an integral part of building most communities, as we are all immigrants at some time in our lineage, Angus. So again, it is, sad that in LA, for example, that they need to call on the LAPD to increase security around the Gurdwaras and for the community as a whole. But again, is that where we want to be? Or do we want to come together to support the Sikh community and all other minority communities to make sure that they feel welcome, accepted, and most of all, safe?
Indeed, absolutely. And as I said before, is the real root cause of so many of these hate crimes is the inability to have this grown-up conversation about these issues, is that they get so quickly crowded with just silly, almost childish accusations of racism, xenophobia, whatever. It's nothing to do with that. It's just the simple fact that we cannot have this grown-up conversation. Even our politicians tie themselves in knots because they're too afraid to have this conversation about this subject properly. And as a result, we get dreadful hate crimes, both sides of the Atlantic occurring. And of course, across Europe, the same issue is unfolding across Europe as well as we speak. I mean, hate crimes are reported on a daily basis, certainly across Central Europe as well. So it's not limited to both sides of the Atlantic. Anyway, James, let's move on to our comments column as time marches on. We had loads of wonderful comments.
If I may, for a quick moment there, Angus,
Yeah.
before we move on, just address one more thing on that. And that is simply for our viewers to really share and expose more people to Satledge, because of course we are a network that wants to raise awareness about Khalistan, about the referendum, about sovereignty and history, but we also want to raise awareness to the mainstream public about the cultural issues, about the religion, about the history. And there's so much that we are learning and we're trying to share with the audience. If we can reach out to more people, then we can be a part of the solution. We may not solve the problem, but we can be a part of the solution in raising awareness. As people become more aware and educated about Sikhs, about the Sikh culture, history, and of course the amazing dedication that Sikhs have to the betterment of the world as a whole, then we can help to reduce the racism. And that's one of our main goals on this channel, and especially on Perspectives, Angus.
Indeed it is. It's all about breaking down barriers, and barriers can only be brought down through education. It's trying to get the message out to the wider world about what it's all about. So, indeed, absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on to our comment section. And Hat B, one of our regulars, kicks us off. Yes, this goes back to a show we did just before our summer break, James. And Hat B says, India has already sent men to fight for Russia and is going to send thousands more. They lie as much as they can. Of course, we talk a lot about this historic relationship between Moscow and Delhi. And this is really is probably I would say the biggest driver of friction between the West and India, is that India just cannot let go of its deep ties with Moscow. And India is going to come to a point where it is going to have to make this decision. Which side, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of Russia, or are you on the side of the democratic West, James? I think it's black and white.
Absolutely. And sorry, Angus, are you sharing your screen there? I don't see the
Oh yeah, my
comments there.
apologies. Yeah, I'll take that.
No worries. I just didn't see it, so I'm like, oh hey, I'm sure the viewers would like to see that instead of my mug.
Indeed. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely true. Yes.
So, yes, anyway, Azad follows up with great way to put it in context of Khalistan, British rulers centuries ago, and today's Brahmins. Now, this was the story about the Shahid Udham Singh, who killed General Dyer. General Dyer was the British officer behind that dreadful massacre of Jallianwala Bagh in 1919. In which hundreds of innocent protesters were literally gunned down by British soldiers under the orders of General Dyer. As a result, he paid with his life. He was assassinated by Udham Singh, who went to great pains to essentially avenge the massacre at Jallianwala Bagh. But ultimately, the argument was it was all about he was a massive campaigner for the independence of India, to breaking away of colonial control of the British. But as I put it in the context, and as Ad picks up, yes, absolutely, it is also in the context of Khalistan. Khalistan is still about breaking away from the colonial control, this time not of the British, but of those who inherited it from the British, the Brahmin rulers. So essentially, Khalistan, as in today's Punjab, is still under colonial control, as indeed is the rest of India under colonial control of the Brahmins, James. Nothing changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, these are fascinating points that we want to bring to our viewers of all cultures. So again, make sure you share the channel. But I think that is a very vital point. And thanks again for the well thought out comments.
And Avtar Dylan, this is an interesting comment that actually, I would say, spans the religions. I mean, certainly as part of Sikh, it's important, but also those from the Christian background as well. Trump's seen through Rat Modi and his Hindu empire. But what you say, I don't get involved with money. It's not going with my soul when my journey is over. And this is a key point, James, isn't it? Is that you can't take it with you. It doesn't matter how many riches you collect during your life. Once you pass to the other side, you can't take it with you.
Absolutely. And hey, there's other things that we wish we could take with us and have with us forever. And I don't think money's really high on that list.
Absolutely. And as you rightly say, Avtar Dylan, Sikhs are just people. We're all just ordinary human beings. Gurus live forever. Indeed they do. So, Gurjit Singh Grewal says, I doubt that India has to buy fuel from Russia for large population at discounted price. Gas prices the Indians pay is the same as North America. Clearly, the deal is not for the ordinary people of India. Now, this is an important point. Yes, we talk a lot about how India is one of the largest, next to China, the second largest buyer of Russian oil, despite international sanctions trying to starve the Russian war machine against Ukraine. There are sanctions against Russia, do not buy Russian oil. And yet India is supplying something like 46% of its oil needs from from Russia. And what it's actually doing, very naughtily, is it's buying Russian oil at a discount and then selling it on the international markets for a profit. I mean, it's just so immoral and flies in the face of international sanctions, etc. And as you rightly say, Gurtej Singh Grewal, is that it's not there's no ordinary Indians benefiting from this. Who do you think's benefiting from it? It's certainly not the average Indian on the street. We know full well who's benefiting from this, James.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a issue that's going on around the world where it's buying, certain nations will purchase the oil from others at a discounted rate because they've got them literally bent over the barrel. And that is no exception with Russia with the international sanctions. Do they need to purchase from Russia? Well, again, it's going to be for the government and the big corporations who are going to benefit. It sure as heck isn't to benefit, the average consumer in India.
And this is why channels like us are banned in India, because we're bringing the truth. If people in India could see our channel and understand the message that we're getting across, the message is very clear. Your government is taking advantage of you. It is taking the mickey out of you. It is making billions, literally billions of dollars every year. Those people behind the government, the people who are corrupt at the top of the tree in India, are making billions out of this sort of deal, buying Russian oil at a discount, selling it onto the international markets. Where do you think that money's going? It's not going into your pocket. And unfortunately, most people in India aren't even aware of this because their media will not highlight this. Here in the West, yeah, we can hold our governments to account. If our governments tried something like this, we would certainly be there and we'd be publicly allowed to broadcast and hold our governments to account. Can't do it in India. One wonders why, eh? Stay Safe makes a return to our comments column. Welcome back, Stay Safe. James Cousineau, Angus Scott, will you mention the Republic of Khalistan Embassy? Yes, we will, and we did. If you watched yesterday's show, in my section, I did indeed report about this wonderful Republic of Khalistan Embassy. I think it was set up in the Gurdwara in Surrey in British Columbia, James.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you what, I'll go a step further there, Stay Safe. I will personally drive over there because I'm in South Surrey, so it's not far for me. I'm going to drive over there, get some video and some photos for tomorrow night's show.
Excellent idea. And in fact, maybe in my front room, I'll set up my local version of the Republic of Khalistan's embassy as well. We can set them up all around the world. Let's get that infrastructure in place, ready for the big day. We look forward to that. And Happy says, please can you share how Indian police and government are using force to take Punjab's farmers under the land pooling plan? Now, I've picked up this comment because great news, and we haven't actually covered this as a news story, and unfortunately I haven't had time. The land pooling policy has been withdrawn. I'm delighted to report that a few days ago, the Punjab government, under all the pressure from grassroots, from the people protesting, particularly the farmers, well done to those on the ground. It just proves that grassroots protesting does work, excuse me, because the land pooling policy has now been officially withdrawn. It was seen for what it was. It was a land grab by the wealthy elite of India. Fortunately, it's been thrown out, James.
Great news for all of those that were concerned, but also for those that may have been tricked already. So hopefully they can find another way to work with the farmers to improve their place in society, because without the farmers, we'd all starve to death.
Indeed. And a final set of comments starts off with TC just highlighting and reminding people about our Substack area. That's more your, James. You're in charge of that area. It's far too technical for me.
It is a great, exciting opportunity for us to interact more, to bring more details and information. And right now you can subscribe. We're not charging for the subscription. And when we do, that'll go back into the Satledge Network to support all of the shows. But right now, yeah, by all means, sign up free on our Substack.
Indeed. And our final comment goes to one of our regulars, Nirmal Singh, says, both of you deserve Khalistan citizenship. We want you to come and play an active role in Khalistan. Khalistan Zindabad, love Australia. Well, we would absolutely deem it an absolute honour to be involved in running Khalistan. I don't think it would reach any sort of governmental level, but certainly the Khalistan Broadcasting Corporation, we would be honoured and delighted to certainly serve our role in broadcasting from Khalistan itself. And as we say, James, we do look forward to the day of independence. James and I, God willing, will be there on Independence Day, broadcasting a show live from the capital of Khalistan.
Absolutely. And I don't know that we would want to live there full time, in the certain fact that we have families and connections here, but we would love to spend a lot of time in Khalistan and promote the heck out of it for people to just experience it, because we know it's going to be just amazing. And again, we will be looking forward to spending a lot of time there and really just soaking in the culture, Angus.
Indeed, absolutely. And it would indeed be an absolute honour to serve the nation of Khalistan and to hold the Khalistan passport. There's a thing to aspire to. But anyway, on that positive note, we must bring Perspectives to a close for another day. Thanks so much to all of you who've contributed in your comments. Please do keep the comments coming in. Do let us know your thoughts. Let us know your opinions, your perspectives on the stories that we cover. And as I always say, if there's something that we've missed and that you think we should be talking about, do let us know in the comments, or send us a direct message at message@satlugetv.com. We do obviously read every email that comes in as well. So thank you to those of you who have emailed us in the past. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It's a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.